What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So sorry I have been a little bit MIA. I have been working on my new video course that's coming out soon. Almost done with it, just got a few things to wrap up and get it all packaged together nicely and everything for you guys. But also I think I needed to take a little bit of extra time to kind of reassess things and figure out what can I do next and what can I bring you guys along with next. So stay tuned for more information on that. I don't have everything figured out right now. But anyways, let's get into the reason you're here for this video, which is to get your questions answered. So thanks so much for joining. Now let's get into it. Also, by the way, I shaved my hair. So that's that. Now my face is just a lot brighter. I just had to wear a hat in the intro so you guys would not think I'm some totally different person. If you've never tried it, definitely feels really great, especially now that it's getting a little bit hotter, and I just feel clean, so it's nice. All right, okay, here's a good one that I just did some stuff about in my course. They said, hey, great helpful video. Which settings do you adjust for exposure for real estate video? So typically the rule of thumb is to keep your camera at your native ISO as much as possible, because that's going to give you the best dynamic range, the best image quality, the best color quality, all the stuff. So if you're able to do that, then keep your shutter speed at double your frame rate. So typically I shoot at 30 frames per second for as many things as I can. So my shutter speed is almost always at 1/60th of a second, because that's double 30 frames per second. And then aperture, even though it does control your exposure also, it's kind of a creative setting because it changes your depth of field. So I actually really like shooting at f2.8 all the time. If you have a lens that just goes to f4, I would go with f4, because that way you're going to have some shallow depth of field in some areas at some points in your video, and it just makes it look a little bit more high quality, less like a super digital phone video. But you can stop that down to a lower number to get a brighter exposure as well. So if you've got your native ISO, you've got your aperture as low as it can go on your lens, you've got your proper shutter speed, 180-degree shutter rule, and it's still too dark, you're just gonna have to bump up the ISO. And usually my go-to, which I actually got this tip from my friend Andre, is to bump it up using multiples of the base ISO. So on this camera, it's 400, so I'll go 400, then I'll go 800, then I'll go 1600, then I'll go 3200, and typically those end up being a little bit cleaner for some reason, which brings up the point why I think the Sony cameras, the FX3 and the A7S III, are actually the kind of the all-time best for real estate video, because they have the 640 native ISO and they have the 12,800 native ISO, and it looks super clean. So that's pretty much impossible on other cameras. It is what it is. So we just talked about raising the ISO to get a brighter exposure in a dark room, but now let's talk about what if the room's too bright and you want to use your aperture at like f2.8. That's when you can add a variable ND on your lens or behind your lens, depending on what setup you have. And all that does is acts basically like sunglasses, and you can lower your exposure just by twisting it. So that's how I set exposure. The end. Kyle Schwartz, back for another Q&A video. Can you do a video about editing HDR drone pics? Sure, why not? So thanks to you guys in the comments, I actually switched completely to doing auto exposure bracketing for my real estate drone photos. So let's pull up a few on the computer and get into those now. So before, after, not bad. All right, so we're gonna do this in Lightroom, and whenever I import anything into Lightroom, I like to do lens and chromatic aberration correction right off the get-go, just because there's no reason not to. It's going to save you a couple of buttons you need to push in your workflow. So all you need to do is click Photo Merge HDR and Auto Align. You don't have to do auto settings unless you want to, but usually it looks pretty good. And de-ghosting. So if there's a lot of wind or something, I like to go ahead and put that on high. That helps with, not having some weird partially moving image. So this is a great example of why you should use HDR. Typically, if you're shooting one layer, you would just have like this, and when you raise that exposure, you're probably going to lose some sky details, or you're not going to realize it while you're shooting, and you're going to mess it up. That's not too bad, but you lose a bit of like saturation and stuff in the sky. So if you do HDR, you're getting this shot, darker shot, brighter shot. And I think this is the one you expose for. So for me, I just make sure while I am shooting, I look at my histogram and make sure nothing is blown out. And you want to make sure whatever is the brightest point on your photo, that is still in there with all the details. I think the auto settings typically look pretty good. That's just changing the shadows and highlights and all that stuff, mostly basic edits. So we got a landscape and we got a house. These are from a shoot I did in Denver. All that I'll do from there is bump up the exposure a little bit so that the histogram is getting a little bit closer to the 100, closer to 0 on the black side. And leaving some contrast I think is good. I don't think you need to have it super flat. Otherwise it's going to look really boring. So just go down here. You can add a little texture. That typically looks pretty good. This is where if you want to adjust some of your colors, you can do that. So making the greens a little bit more blue adds some color contrast, but I think that looks kind of cool. So makes it look a little bit more like it's fall. And you can lower some saturation on different colors, make it look a little bit less, super vibrant and fake looking. Typically I'll lower the blue a little bit, and then I'll probably be able to just copy that over to this one, see where we're at. Because when we're working with a set, we always want them to match. So this one was shot around sunrise, so 6500 is pretty good for your white balance. So was this shortly after. And what I will typically do is go in and use some of the radial filters around the house, and then let's see, yeah, that's backwards. So just go in here and invert it. So really simple. Mostly I'm going to pull down those highlights in the sky, and that will just help bring the emphasis onto the house. So you can do a whole bunch of other stuff, like maybe make these a little bit brighter to help add some leading lines to the house, towards the house, so that area is not super dark. And I'm holding Option to erase a little bit of that. So really simple. I think you can erase a little bit of this as well, because it looks kind of fake. So add, because we did it backwards. My bad. Alright, so just a simple edit. But as you can see, we got from there to there. And overall now I think we can actually raise that exposure just a little bit. But I kind of like that bit more saturated, natural, landscape looking shot. So stick with that. Now with this one, I would always make sure that it's level. That one is a little bit off. And I think for this one, not gonna go with that. Let's lower that a little bit. Let's lower the, you can change the greens, and that changes the contrast a little bit with the colors. And especially because the sun was hitting this area so bright, I'm gonna tone those down just a little bit. Tone up the green. So I think this one's fine. So before, after, not bad. And I don't think I checked the, there we go. So before, after. That's pretty much it. Now I'll just highlight all of them and export. And with my file names, I'll put address, client name, the end. That's all. And for here, I like to go 4500 pixels, 300 pixels per inch, screen high, and then we're done. So pretty simple workflow. Honestly, it's pretty cool how much better quality drone photos you can get by doing this HDR auto exposure bracketing method. It's a lot more likely you're going to get the details of the sky and all the dark shadowy spots on the property. So definitely worth doing, and I think any drone you're using, the photos are going to be up to par if you're doing this method. All right, here's one from a month ago. Somehow I missed this. I'm new to your channel, and trust me, you're doing a great job. Have you got any courses on real estate videography and video editing? So almost. The course is going to be kind of like the Photo Foundations course, covering all the essentials that you need to get started. Operating your camera and doing gimbal work, doing camera stuff, doing drone stuff, editing, all the stuff. So I will have one soon, so stay tuned. But until then, definitely check out some more videos on the channel to see a lot more behind the scenes on that. That's already up there. All right. How much are you selling your lens for? Oh, also another update. I just sold like most of my gear, so I'm using what I have left right now, which is the EOS R and this Joby mic that I'll be doing a video about later. Really good mic. Can be used on camera, can be used on USB-C, and it sounds really good. Really simple, and it's smaller, so I really like it. Okay, so new camera coming in on Tuesday. All that I'll say right now is it's a Canon, and I'm pumped about it. It's very sad selling all your gear because the value you get back from it compared to what you put into it sucks. But it all worked out fine. Okay, another comment about the channel, I guess. So James Nyers says, they like how I work around the shortcomings of things to figure out how to make things work in the end. So that's definitely something that's going to help you a lot. Being a good problem solver in this industry, creating anything. If you're able to work with whatever you end up getting through trial and error, eventually you're going to figure out how to get consistent results no matter what scenario you're in. So testing your limits and putting yourself into new situations, definitely a way to grow and figure that stuff out. Also, if this is due to using gear that's not exactly the best, learning on cheaper gear, learning on gear that's less capable, and figuring out how to work around it is going to help you when you eventually maybe upgrade to better gear. You can get by with cheaper gear, but better gear is definitely more expensive for a reason, and typically it makes your job just that much easier. Okay, so we've got some from Oakland Media. Hello. There's like 5 comments on one video. That is funny. Okay, it's about lighting listings with LED lights. And really, I mean, I just did that video for fun to see, you know, what kind of impact it makes. And honestly, it's not really worth it for most scenarios. Maybe if you're doing interior design shoots or product shoots, then it's worth it. But for most real estate stuff, most people are not paying enough to where you're going to have the time to do all that stuff. So what I would typically recommend is to just take some spare light bulbs just in case somebody doesn't have them at the house, and you need to swap some out, or if they're just like really, really mismatched, you can fix that in real life before having to deal with it in the edit. They're considering using a Insta360 One X2 at their agency to do video walkthroughs of smaller homes for people who don't have a big market for video listings. I guess that could be cool. Maybe if you walked around and held it in front of you and talked so you could switch to different camera angles. Otherwise, honestly, I would say just get agents to do these on phones with the ultra wide angle lens, because honestly, I think for interiors, probably the phone's going to look a little bit better, have a little bit less noise, and the audio's pretty good on iPhones already, and everybody is used to them. So, I don't know. Do what you want to do. Might work out to be cool. The Studio Curse. They said, I translated this earlier. Basically, they're saying there's no reason for some person to be on camera for a tutorial, which makes sense. I'm definitely not a narcissist. It's very weird making videos of myself talking in camera, but I don't do it so that you'll be forced to look at me or because I think I'm awesome or something. I'm just doing all this content to help you guys, so hopefully it's done that. But I agree, except for seeing somebody doing work behind the scenes, doing problem solving, doing troubleshooting, like we were saying earlier, seeing B-roll, seeing camera settings, seeing the view from the camera, I think that's a lot better way to learn. So maybe what I can take from this is do more behind the scenes content, which you guys seem to like the most anyways. So I get where they're coming from. I feel like that whenever I see some videos where I don't really end up actually learning anything. So I try to make sure that you can actually learn something from my videos. Otherwise, what's the point? All right, so Toby Town Media just bought a FX3. They're asking if a Sony 16-35 f4 lens will still look good on the FX3. They're not sure if they need to get a G Master lens with the 2.8 aperture. I already responded to this one, but in case you're curious about that, for real estate especially, f4 lenses are totally great, especially for photos or for wide-angle video shots. If you've got a camera that has really good low light performance like the Sony's, you should be good. The main reason that I like lower apertures like 2.8 or lower is if I'm filming people and I want to separate them from the background, or if I want to separate like a detail shot to make some small details stand out. It really helps to not have everything in focus. So for your wide zoom, definitely the f4 option is going to be totally fine. And bonus, most of them also have built-in image stabilization, which helps a lot. So definitely a great way to start and save like half the price. So why not save that money and get like a 50mm lens on the side also. All right, Christopher Roth says, what mode do you use on your gimbal? And pretty much, I think like 99% of the time, literally, I use the follow mode, or on my normal Ronin S, it is called pan follow mode. And that's just because I don't really have a reason to use the roll axis. I'll switch to an FPV mode if I have some random creative idea where I want to use the roll axis, but for most of the shoots that I've ever done, just not really necessary. Mostly a creative choice. All right, Andre says, all the behind the scenes videos, current coffee setup, ? So my coffee setup has not changed. The only thing that's changed is I had to actually repair my motor on my coffee bean grinder. So it took a little while to get it from customer support, so I didn't have my espresso every morning for like a month, but now it's back in action. So espresso or an Americano with the counterculture coffee beans that are the purple bag. That's my favorite one. All right, a comment about the R7 from that video when I was in Dallas, Texas, using the R7. Have you found using the R7 for stills is good? And yes, let me know in the comments if you want to see a full review on that. I did all these photos and test footage with it, but then I got caught up with other stuff, so I never ended up actually making a review from whenever I rented it. But overall, if you're okay with an APS-C camera and have the right lenses for it, it's a really, really nice camera. Does time lapses really well, does video really well, does photos really well. It's definitely a lot better than this camera that I'm filming on right now, the EOS R, because it's downscaled, I think, from 6K footage. So I thought it was really nice, and it's tiny. And as Chase mentioned in the comments, it's also got the normal Canon LPE6 batteries. So compared to the R8 that's full frame, that's otherwise pretty similar, it's actually a little bit more compatible with better things like better battery life and stuff. So definitely something to consider. Although having the R8 on a gimbal would be really nice because it's lighter. Michael Freechild said 5 days ago on my last behind the scenes video, I think, in the loft, he said, the production and execution were great in the final edit, but the explanation of the space seems like it was missing something. More of the emphasis on the decor is what ended up happening. So yes, I agree. This kind of relates to the R7 comment, but I totally agree. I think that video definitely needed some more sweeping wide shots to really show the whole layout. Kind of messed it up on there, but I also don't normally shoot on an APS-C camera. I was shooting on the C200 with the super 35mm sensor, so all my shots ended up being a little bit tighter, and I think it's definitely a great example that you need those 16mm full frame shots, or on that camera it would have been like 10 or 12mm. Would have worked really well. So if you're out there making these videos, definitely make sure that your video makes sense and you feel like even if you hadn't been there, you would have a picture of how the layout is, because that is super, super important to buyers. And I messed it up on that video, trying to make it just a fun YouTube video. All right, my EOS R is about to stop recording. We're at 26 minutes. Obviously it's gonna be shorter when I edit, but that's all the questions for today. I've got some plans for some videos coming up, but just because I've been working on the course and everything, it's not been a priority, unfortunately. I've got some plans for some more behind the scenes stuff coming up soon. And like I said in the start, getting a new camera on Tuesday. Hopefully it comes in on time and everything. But I've got a cool trip coming up where I'm doing this project in Canada. First time going to Canada, so shout out if you're from there. I'm gonna be going to Banff and doing this like mini documentary project for a foundation. So pretty pumped on that. I'm gonna be going there for the first time and seeing some super epic mountains. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful for you. If I got to your questions, hello. Thank you guys so much for the support. I haven't uploaded that much lately, so it really means a lot that you're still sticking around, you're still commenting and engaging on here and on Instagram. It's always cool to hear from you guys, and stay tuned because a lot more coming up soon. So, thanks.